Hey, welcome back. We have an easy topic this week. Isn't that refreshing? Sometimes we have challenging topics, and that's good because we need to keep our strength and our ability to engage and to use all of our faculties. And this week's topic is an easy one, and uh, I use it in sort of a unusual way. But the topic this week is being, excuse me, is being on the beam. And we're going to talk about this unusual quality of being on the beam, and we will contrast it with the experience of life when we're off the beam and the variable and the increments between the two. But I think it's a very apt story and metaphor to use the history of airplane flight. Golly, we've only been in the air now for 122 years via powered flight. And, when it started, it was very rough. There was no cockpit. Orville or Wilbur sat in the front of an open cockpit, and their first flight was less than the length of a football field. There wasn't a lot of navigation going on. There was a great prayer that they wouldn't navigate themselves face first into the ground and kill themselves, as many of the original pilots did. Um, so anyway, there wasn't, you didn't really have to plan your flight very much. But then, you know what the real developmental stage was for airplane flight? World War One, because we clever humans realized that airplanes could be wonderful weapons. And so uh, the slow progress became very fast. Planes became much faster, could fly much higher, could carry many more machine guns and other weapons. They were much more maneuverable. They could fly much longer distances, and they became much better killing machines. Yeah. Okay, so planes just kept getting better and bigger, and in the 20s they were able to actually enclose a larger cockpit, and then get this, they put an engine on the left wing and on the right wing, and now the cockpits were so big that you could hold two people in a plane, and still navigation was very rough. It's like you'd kind of look down and it'd be like, yep, there's Farmer John's cornfield. I think we're going in the right direction, because planes still weren't flying very far. But as the 20s developed and into the early 30s, they actually developed a plane big enough to hold three or four or five people. And good capitalists came along and decided, hey, we could fly people somewhere. And so regional flights came along, and planes got a little better, and they learned how to put heaters in airplanes, et cetera. And now it was no longer what was called dead reckoning to get where you were going. In other words, we're going to fly over there and we're going to look around. And of course, it's not so easy when the weather is bad or it's dark. But they began to need to go longer distances. And then the invention of the radio and radio waves. And so now something miraculous happened in the 30s and 40s. You could fly on the beam. A beam could be sent from your destination that a pilot could tap into on a very crude little instrument on his dashboard. And it would tell you essentially, are you on the beam? Are you off the beam? When you're on the beam, you're going right where you're supposed to go. You arrive there much more quickly. You use less fuel. You take less time. You put your passengers through less misery, et cetera, et cetera. Keep this in mind. When Charles Lindbergh, he was the first to fly across the Atlantic from New York to Paris. That was, I think it was roughly a 36-hour flight, and there was no meal service on that flight. There was no naps, and there was no navigation. He had to hope he was going in the right direction. So it's amazing how far we've come. So this week's topic is being on the beam for us individually. I think the fact that we would invent that sort of a technology for our planes and our travel is indicative of what an amazing faculty it is that we intuitively have inside of us, that tells us when we're on the beam and tells us when they're off the beam. Well, the skeptic might say, who's sending you the beam and where is it guiding you? I think as spiritual friends, we know who's sending the beam: the infinite higher organizing principle, God, love, source, infinite nameless glory and goodness that doesn't matter what we call him or her. It just matters that we call and tap in. A beam is being sent to all of us. It's being broadcast to all of us all the time. And we know what it feels like to be on the beam because we know what it feels like to be off it. We know the feeling of disconnection, fear, worry, dread, ill health, depression, sadness, uncertainty, confusion, misery, and doubt that goes along with being off the beam. It's how we learn. And the pain of being off the beam at first forces us to get on the beam. And, that old phrase, we're beaten into reasonableness. But as we get better at being on the beam, we become a very finely tuned aircraft. We have very sophisticated GPS software right inside of us that gives us moment to moment feedback that's perfectly accurate, that says on the beam, off the beam, and we know and we can feel it. Now, of course, meditation is the number one technique, not the only one by any means. Being of service to others, praying, all of our exercise, right, Diet, all these wonderful things that we do to get on the beam. But when we get quiet, the little ping that God is sending to us consistently that says, come this way, come up higher to your best, finest and highest life, is we hear that. And when we're on it, the only benefits of being on the beam consistently are better health, more intelligence, wisdom, love, guidance, inspiration, cats in your lap, beautiful weather, the joy of living, a sense of peace and calm and well-being. And now is good, and we anticipate the glory of where we're arriving, because the destination of where we're going, the beam that's being sent from there, is truly immeasurably wonderful. Okay, be on the beam today, and if you're not, remember you have skillful guidance inside that can bring us back in one breath or in one prayer. And we'll continue the topic all week long. See you on Tuesday.